to introduce and make a presentation to my friend and man of the hour here tonight, William C. Koch Jr., also known as Deputy Attorney General Koch, Legal Counsel and Governor Koch, Commissioner Koch, Judge Koch, Justice Koch, Dean Koch, or just Bill, as I think he probably would rather be called. Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes wrote in New York Trust Company versus Eisner in 1921 that a page of history is worth a volume of logic. Justice Koch took this to heart as his opinions embodied the essence of Holmes' wisdom. His opinions waxed eloquently about law, legal history, occasionally going as far back as the Magna Carta in the Middle Ages. When writing about the history of tort law in 2008, he cited Justice Holmes' 1988 work, The Common Law. When introducing the subject of harmless error, he referenced Senator Thomas Hart Benton's efforts in the early part of the 19th century to reorganize the Tennessee judiciary. When writing about collateral estoppel, he quoted 19th century Tennessee Supreme Court decisions. When writing about the ecclesiastical extension doctrine, he cited 19th century U.S. Supreme Court decisions. And he sometimes cited English law opinions from earlier centuries. In his 7 years on the Tennessee Supreme Court and 30 years in total as a Tennessee appellate jurist, Judge and then Justice William C. Koch Jr. wrote thousands and thousands of pages. His Supreme Court opinion in State v. Hester in 2010 comes in at nearly 100 pages in the Southwestern Reporter. At times, we, his fellow justices, wished his opinions were just a little shorter, but far more often than not, the power of his logic prevailed. There was a reason for his scholarly detail. He cogently explained the evolution and development of legal doctrines and principles that even I and other people in the bar and the bench could understand. When Governor Phil Bredesen appointed then Judge Koch to the Tennessee Supreme Court in 2007, he said, "There is no question that Bill Koch will be an excellent justice on our Supreme Court. His reputation for fairness and consistency, his strong commitment to the law, and his dedication to the faithful dispensation of justice will serve the Tennessee Supreme Court and the citizens of our state well." Governor Bredesen was right, because Justice Koch was fair, consistent, and dedicated. He worked as hard or harder than anyone on the court, and he served the Tennessee Supreme Court and the citizens of Tennessee nobly. I saw it firsthand. And I can't think of another lawyer or jurist who loves history, the Supreme Court, and the law as much as Bill Koch. He has devoted his adult life to public service and law. After graduating from Vanderbilt Law School, he worked at the Attorney General's office and later became Deputy Attorney General. He served as Commissioner of the State Department of Personnel and Legal Counsel to Governor Lamar Alexander before embarking on a 30-year judicial career. Earlier this summer, he retired from the court to become Dean of the National School of Law. I was excited for his opportunity, but really sad to see him leave the court. He left behind a legacy of achievement, and those of us who served with Bill had an opportunity to see a different side of him than you may have seen in the courtroom. We saw his absolute devotion and love for his wife, Debbie, and her absolute love and devotion in return. And it is a great love story for those of us who have seen it. We saw his great sense of humor and his dry wit. We tasted his and ate his delicious culinary creations, especially his Caesar salad, which he made with ingredients I didn't even know existed. He squeezed stuff out of the tube that I didn't even know you could buy. We saw firsthand his love for travel on a wine tasting trip through the Napa Valley. We saw his love of exploration through his photographs of his European travels. We saw his passion for teaching by watching his eyes light up when he talked about his students at the National School of Law. And we saw his kindness and his compassion. And we saw that he wrote very eloquent and prompt thank you notes at all the appropriate occasions. We experienced his willingness to help and offer support at any time. When I first started on the Court of Appeals in 2004, I'd never been a judge and had never written an opinion. And I really wasn't sure if I was going to make it. I looked around and I found two judges whose works I really liked. And one of those was Judge Koch, and he doesn't even know this. But I made a Koch file where I collected a group of his opinions. And when I really was lost in any direction, I would pull out my Koch file for inspiration. And his opinion served as a guide for me and helped me figure out what to do in many cases. And I admit, I still pull out the Koch file on occasion as a resource. So it is my honor to present this award from the Tennessee Supreme Court Historical Society to our friend, Justice William C. Koch, Jr. Great things about Bill. We were campaigning this summer. He got went on the trail with us and did a fabulous job. But we were at one stop and he's talking about how great I am. I mean, you know, they need to vote for me and all that. And he starts out though by saying, impressing on the audience how very, very different we are. Like how different we are. And I'm like, wait a minute, could you kind of slow that down a little bit? I don't need to be that different from you. You're so fantastic. Sort of implying, anyway. Thank you, Bill, for all that.
I want to thank you all so much for coming. Your time is so valuable, and your Friday night time is even more valuable. So thank you for coming. The sponsors, thank you for the event. Chief Justice Lee, your words leave me almost speechless, but I'm going to wrap it. And I just really want to say three things very briefly. The first is, this is the Tennessee Supreme Court Society, Historical Society, and I view this as the formal designation that I am now a relic. And I accept that with humility and gratitude. The second thing is, in listening to the earlier comments about the gender of the Supreme Court, I have to tell you, again, the historical truth, that I was almost fired twice in the Attorney General's office. The first time was when, in an unguarded moment, I was talking to the court reporter of the Tennessean, and over an adult beverage, maybe several adult beverages, and he was asking me about a particular opinion that had just been issued, and my comment was, who knows what goes through the minds of those 5 old men up on the 3rd floor. And that, of course, was repeated verbatim in the Tennessee. My good friend said, and Assistant Attorney General said, well, there were only 16 of us at the time. So the Attorney General stood us up in a line and said, whoever said that, would you please take one step out? He was hoping it was going to be somebody else. And so I took my one step out and got severely chastised for it. But that's right, there were 5 old men up there. No question about it. The second thing, the second and final thing is this, that I have been given wonderful opportunities that I didn't earn. David Pack hired me in 1970 to be a law clerk. I didn't know Lamar Alexander that well. We had met in the courtroom a couple of times, but he gave me a wonderful opportunity in 1978 and again in 1984 when my good friend Lou Connor called me up, and this is again a historical fact. Lou says, I'm running for governor. This is before Winfield Dunn had announced. And he said, I just wanted to let you know because you ought to take my place. And I said, well, I hadn't really thought about that. He said, oh, it's going to be great for your golf game. That, by the way, is a big lie. And he said, look, I said, well, I'm really getting ready to go get an honest job. And he said, well, do this for a couple of years. It'll make you more saleable at the bar. Well, of course, that ended up being 30 years, so I couldn't keep the timetable. But the final, so I've been, and then of course Governor Bredesen gave me at considerable personal expense to him, gave me an opportunity to serve on the Supreme Court. I am very grateful for that. But as we're sitting here tonight, I see many accomplished lawyers who contribute to the community and the bar in numerous ways every day. And you all are the heroes, not me. I'm at the end of my career. We have now a new generation of lawyers coming together who are going to have a chance to contribute and make their mark. So, for example, my heroes right now are the 513 men and women who are studying law at night at the National School of Law. They're juggling families, day jobs, and going to school. They're my heroes. There's a young man in Memphis who I met 25 years ago selling rugs on 4th Avenue. We were just buying a rug. And he said, "Oh, you're a judge. I've always wanted to be a lawyer." His family had to flee a land when the Shah was deposed. And he's selling rugs. He says, "I've always wanted to be a lawyer." And I said, "Well, you ought to be. You ought to go ahead and do it." He went to the University of Memphis Law School, graduated 11 years ago, practicing immigration law, has 2 offices, employs 14 people, and what he does with his spare time is give free citizenship classes to his clients. These are the heroes. So for whatever contributions I made, thank you for recognizing those, but we have true heroes in front of us. We have 5 men and women who come to work every day on the Supreme Court and are buffeted by the public and the press, sometimes fairly, sometimes unfairly, but they keep their eyes on the prize. Those are heroes, and we all ought to celebrate them too.